The Acolyte is going to be
something that, like, my parents would have allowed me to see when I was younger as a queer person.
Gotcha.
But I would have been able to understand as a queer person.
I mean, amazing. After all, how could it not be?
Yeah, I just try to treat everything as if we're on RuPaul's Drag Race.
It will challenge what we know about the Jedi and the Sith by making the Sith the good guys.
Something that was from the villain's perspective, and something that maybe questioned the Jedi Order.
We support the evil people. Yes, how very Hollywood of you.
Then the Jedi become the antagonists. Not the bad guys, but they become the bad guys to the bad guys.
The Acolyte will be Frozen meets Kill Bill meets The Mandalorian, similar to Andor, Disney Star Wars Watchmen. And if that doesn't make sense to you, then you've probably just got low media literacy, according to somebody on Twitter.
It's a combination of Frozen and Kill Bill, which is kind of a nuts combo.
My favorite bit of the Watchmen analogy is the subtitle, where they're trying to describe why it's like Watchmen. Well, it's got martial arts in it, and it's set during the High Republic, just like the Watchmen was. I don't know.
God, I would love to make a story like this.
It's dark and moody, like an emo teenager, focusing on a gritty Jedi murder mystery investigation. You can tell the show's intended for women when it focuses on true crime.
Villainess actually being a powerful, misunderstood woman. It was hitting me on such a deep level.
And it's hard not to get the feeling that it's quite a strong Watchmen influence. How? It's a murder mystery. You mean like Poirot? No, like Watchmen.
And all the whoring politicians shout, "Save us," and I'll whisper, "No."
And The Acolyte is definitely a special case when it comes to Star Wars TV series. It's a lot like an onion. It's got many layers to it, and the more layers you peel away, the more you want to cry.
Seems like you are in great hands with showrunner Leslye Headland.
Former personal assistant to Harvey Weinstein. I could think of better hands to be in, to be honest, in every sense of the word.
She cries when I cry. You know, it's just, it's that kind of relationship.
Close your eyes.
But at least when this show comes out, you will definitely know who to blame.
Kathy gets a lot of shit online.
Yeah.
But I know that she was the one who made this show.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, you start with the basics. That after Disney, throughout the expanded universe, well, she's just decided I'm going to start shoving it back in. I thought it was cool, and no one told me I couldn't. That's not the only thing that they didn't tell her she couldn't do. For instance, she's been shoving various different parts of her fan fiction that she's written into the series as well.
How much of that Star Wars fan fiction that she used to write do you think ended up in the show?
All of it, for sure.
I did do a couple of RPG campaigns on Zoom. There are a couple of characters from those campaigns that may or may not be in the shows.
You find out that they keep describing the Sith as the underdogs, and there's many other clips of them talking about how the Jedi are this big institution that the Sith are fighting against, and how it's told from the Sith perspective, which makes the Jedi the antagonists. But because this is Hollywood, they don't want to just come out and say, no, we're evil, and that's why in our stories the heroes are the evil people. No, instead, we get very, very weird comments.
When you think you're going to tell the story about bad guys and the Jedis might be the antagonists to those Jedis, I think that makes people nervous. But it didn't make Kathy nervous.
Like in the trailer where they're desperately trying to set up the Sith as the good guys. This isn't about good and bad.
This isn't about good or bad. This is about power.
Firstly, incredibly childish language in this context. Most people would just say good versus evil. But no, if we say bad, it kind of minimizes what the Sith are. Oh, you've been a bit naughty.
Going to be from the perspective of who we usually see as the villains.
Usually see as the villains. So they're not going to be the villains in this then. They're going to be a powerful, misunderstood woman. And then you've got this is about
power and who is allowed to use it.
basically the motivation of the evil Sith.
Who we usually see as the villains.
I've spoken before about how Hollywood has just an inverse morality. Everything good is evil, everything evil is good. And I think The Acolyte is going to be an excellent example of that.
What I love about Star Wars, how it delves into the complicated ethics of power.
Don't you understand? The bad guys are actually the underdog. And because we like the underdogs, that makes them the good guys. Because we're rebels, and that means we just support the people who aren't in charge, no matter how evil they are.
Someone is killing Jedi. It doesn't make sense.
Someone has been killing Jedi at every single time period Star Wars has ever been set in. It's that line that doesn't make any sense. What if the bad guys are actually the underdog? It seemed like a cool reversal. You realize most people don't do that because the good guy would just wipe them off the face of the earth. There is no struggle and challenge when you can just squash them like a bug.
Your eyes can deceive you.
We must not trust them.
Gaslight yourself. What a great message. It's also a time of an institution where conceptions around the Force are very strict. And I think we're trying to explore within our show how when an institution has a singular conception of how power can be used, we try to provide a lot of different perspectives and answers to that. Because if I wanted anybody to tell me how power could be used, a Hollywood writer's room is definitely the people I'd want to give me an in-depth analysis of political theory.
Here's your own Star Wars show on a silver platter. What are you gonna do, babe?
The idea is to honor the ethos of Star Wars and ideas around the Force, stick to the lore, and also challenge them. Hopefully harmoniously. We want to stick to the lore while also challenging the lore and hope we can pull that off. I hope I can maintain two contradictory ideas in my own head without that being a problem, because that's gonna happen. These are people that don't even understand that morality exists and there is good and evil.
I'm clinically an asshole. Nothing I can do.
So I'm sure they're gonna nail the complex plot they've set up here. Whereas George Lucas himself said the secret ultimately, which is the bottom line in Star Wars, is that there's two kinds of people in the world: compassionate people and selfish people. Good and evil. One is the dark side, one is the light side, and everything else is Leslye Headland. How did the Sith go from the rule of two and being quote-unquote extinct to Palpatine coming to power without the Jedi knowing about it? Well, for a start, because they thought they were extinct, even though they weren't, because there was only two of them. This isn't the incredible mystery that you seem to think it is. If the Jedi are this benevolent institution, then anyone who opposes them would be the underdog. Yes, and evil, because they're opposing benevolence.
If you don't like the Acolyte, that's fine. It doesn't matter.
Headland explains that she wanted her story to center on somebody who's morally grey. So you want a morally grey person who opposes benevolence. Your language games won't work here, nor will your clear obsession with evil. One who doesn't fit neatly into Sith or Jedi boxes.
Navigated by Geo, who appears to be a rock.
Just a prediction here, but I have a feeling she's going to be evil, but Hollywood and Leslye are going to think she's good, because she aligns with their values, not the values of a normal person.
I want people to realize that there were maybe people in the orbit that were not on board with this show.
I love the idea of a character that was unknowable in her goodness or her badness. Why do you talk like a child? I love the idea of somebody where I couldn't tell whether they were good or evil, and it's not unknowable. You will be able to know it by her actions. It will actually be incredibly obvious whether she's good or evil.
I see fire.
And given that so many Disney series in recent years has just had their heroes being evil,
could have finally understood why every time he chose you instead of me.
It's not about you! Oh, it's so annoying! When you're trying to deliberately muddy the water, you're not going to fare any better, are you? So then she thinks she's incredibly deep for knowing that blue and red make purple. Oh, if I just have people be purple, then we won't know whether they're good or evil. Despite them doing actions. Sorry, no, not evil. They're just morally ambiguous. No, they're not evil, they just disagree with the fundamental morality of society.
It's the principle of the thing.
Stenberg, who credits the show with helping usher in safety for black... I'm sorry, what? Amanda Stenberg on how the Acolyte has made sci-fi safe? Speaks out on the most diverse Star Wars project ever. It's the most inclusive and diverse Star Wars project ever. Amanda managed to tick more boxes than ever before in one person. When Disney met her, it must have been like finding the Holy Grail. Just like a halo around her head as she was glowing in the distance. It's a world I've always deeply loved and been invested in. So in other words, none of the changes were necessary. Didn't die when you liked Star Wars before, did you? No. But now I'm ushering in a wave for safety. The more my bank balance increases, the safer everybody gets.
Very well.
And that was one of the reasons I chose to step into this world, as well as my ever-increasing bank balance and my ability to virtue signal over being a narcissist. We've all come from different corners of the world. Point to a corner on the globe, I dare you. I don't think I could have ever imagined myself as a Jedi, Barnett says, because I was not reflected for so much time. I'm sorry, are you one of the people that can't understand abstract concepts? Oh, I couldn't see one, so my imagination couldn't possibly think of one. Can you think of an apple and rotate it in your own head? I need to know. But this is going to be really impactful on my bank balance. If I'm being candid, this is the first time you're getting to see an Asian Jedi. And nobody cares. It's a pretty big responsibility. These are people who are spending so much time huffing their own farts. I'm surprised they don't have squeaky voices. Oh, look, I've swallowed helium.
Have you lost your reptilian ass mind?
Getting to see him inspire a new generation to take up the light. It's a fantasy series. Not like you're getting them into STEM or something. I hope one day they can grow up and buy a lightsaber off Disney merch so I get some more money. pretty incredible. I also really loved that our show was much more woman-centered than you've previously seen in Star Wars. Yeah, love, we already gathered that from all the crying.
Been incredibly emotional, and I have cried many times today.
And I cried all the way through it.
Leslye is a genius. Well, although apparently not clever enough to realize anything about Harvey. With shows like Ahsoka, I feel like we're part of a wave of more inclusive and beautifully represented Star Wars. That'll be why it died on its ass. And I felt the importance of it. Fans don't necessarily look like what you normally think the traditional Star Wars fan looks like. What do you think the traditional Star Wars fan looks like, you bigot?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't care.
Given how big an IP Star Wars was, this very much sounds like a you problem, and your inability to think of anyone but yourself. Headland wanted to show elements of martial arts and samurai movies, rather than just having lightsaber fights, and we had to keep telling Amandla to slow down, you're too fast. Great, it's just what I wanted in a Star Wars show. Slower combat. Is this going to be Rebel Moon again? I've seen Ahsoka. You needed to be telling that actress to speed up.
I'm just so excited to see Rosario Dawson and Ahsoka.
And don't come back. I have a feeling this isn't going to be any different. Oh, you've got to slow down. The camera's not picking you up. You look like your stunt double. Why is that a problem? The actress and the stunt double are supposed to look the same. I can't believe you're too good at fighting. Can you please make yourself look more trash? And then we find out that the inspiration for the fight scenes were movies like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which might work for that movie. It doesn't for Star Wars, though. I mean, if we take one of the fight scenes, what's she doing here? Stuff like that looks ridiculous in this universe, where you're supposed to be fighting another person. If you're fighting someone and trying to kill them, why are you kicking twice the height of their face? I mean, I'm not sure what the guy is doing here. Just sort of dodges to the side a bit. It's alright, mate. They weren't going to hit you anyway. But when someone's putting themselves in such a vulnerable position by seeing how high they can kick, which admittedly is an impressive height, but they're just leaving themselves open to just die. Lightsabers, quite fast to attack with. If we're going to have these life and death duels, can we please just not leave ourselves open to killing blows all the time? I don't think that's much to ask, no matter what your inspiration is. But Headland says the story ultimately hinges on the complicated history between characters, almost a father-daughter relationship.
Dad issues.
They're gonna meme the shit out of that.
I know people keep telling Hollywood writers to write what they know, but could we please not for a change? Give it a try. Write something that other people might be interested in. I think with Star Wars, it's always some kind of underdog versus institutional threat. I think you just mean hero fights against evil, or is a fraught familial issue that needs to be resolved. What?
Yeah, I think the thing with Star Wars is they've all got daddy issues.
Now they're back playing a completely different game of sorts. The game of acting?
That's what I was attracted to. And both of these appear in this show, just in ways that are turned in their head, yes. Leslye Headland, author. She won't engage in any tropes, no, not any stereotypes in this. We're gonna take what you know and flip it upside down. You will not expect this show. Like making The Acolyte a Star Wars show with no war in it.
In a very woman-centered world, Star Wars is very, like, patriarchal.
Who needs a war when you could spend all your time doing true crime and talking about your feelings?
Yes.
I mean, I know they said this was a female-focused series, but come on.
It has been so emotional. I'm shaking.
Star Wars saved my life. Like,
I've been incredibly emotional, and I have cried many times today.
I'm emotional. I saw Frozen in the theater, a grown woman, and I cried all the way through it.
I mean, I cried. I already said that.
Could you please write something that might attract an audience? Because I tell you what, your hairstyles won't.
I'm a Jedi Knight. I got real cool hair in it.
People have noticed that this hairstyle is just, at this point, a trope. We want them to look like idiots. That comes from me. Even IGN is like, can we please stop making people look like this? As this trailer was released, Leslye Headland came out and started doing new and improved interviews compared to the Star Wars celebration. They were still filming when they were doing those previous interviews, but now filming is complete, and so they've got to think, well, we've used practical sets much more than other shows, so at least I won't get that constant feeling like I've got eye strain that I do when anyone uses the volume. Always feels like I need my glasses when I'm wearing my glasses.
There's a theme here, by the way. A little bit.
Part of that just came out of necessity, and part of it was a creative choice. I am quite interested in the necessity part. Is it because it was too expensive? I'm also not sure how Jedi-centric the shows are. Obviously, Ahsoka is. What? Ahsoka wasn't even a Jedi. And as we found out in Ahsoka, anyone can be a Jedi now as long as they concentrate hard enough. And really, the question she's asking about the show is, it's not about good or bad. This is about power. And who is allowed to use it? That's the question. It's not, is somebody good or is somebody bad? bad because we're evil, and so we don't want you to think about questions like morality. We want to move away from morality into this postmodern world where it's just about power and who you can oppress. We only care about imbalance because it's equality that they value most. There's an imbalance somewhere, and that means it must be equalized.
You stupid woman with your weird child!
That could be a moral imbalance. They might actually be too moral and have to be dragged down into evil. But if there's a power imbalance, how does that affect the power of Star Wars? Leslye herself, we don't care about morality, we care about power and how an imbalance of power can actually affect who can exercise their power. It's basically the story of revolution. I can't imagine why someone like this could be interested in trying to overthrow a civilized society to embrace power. Hollywood really is a case of just writing what they know, isn't it? You're the first woman to create a live-action Star Wars show. Can you explain how important that is? Not, do you think that's important? Do you think that's relevant? Do you think that I'm an imbecile for asking that question in the first place? That would be a neutral framing, not... Can you explain how it's important? And is diversity a big focus? Well, I'd say I'm very proud, but there have been many, many women who have contributed to the films before. Makes me tear up a bit. People have actually done work and they didn't have dangly bits. The sisterhood. I don't even know why this is a question, to be honest. Let alone how much we talk about it. Wow, that is the answer to the question. I love how she's on about how she casts things. She's like, I had no idea who to cast, and then I thought, well, you know, I've seen Squid Game. Do you want to be in Star Wars? Just happened to be in a TV show she's watching at the time. No, when it comes down to it, if I needed to summarize what The Acolyte is going to be, well, I think that's pretty close, don't you? I was just so tearful with the emotional resonance of it all. They talked about their feelings.
The industry talks a lot about identity.
Because it's going to ask important questions like, this is about power, who's allowed to use it? Could this be the killer taking the Jedi to task for their unchecked power and authority? Yes, last thing you'd want is benevolent people in charge. Obviously, you'd prefer a Sith. I mean, we do have this benevolent institution just ruling everything in a golden age, but have you considered that the Sith also have equal opportunity to be evil in the world? These are the kind of important questions that we need answers to. For some reason, no one's quite worked out yet. This is going to be, by far, the most innovative Star Wars series ever, pushing the envelope. And the new Star Wars series and The Acolyte is absolutely brimming with inclusion. And while Leslye may be claiming whatever you think The Acolyte is, it's not. I think I have a pretty good idea. You've not really been subtle about it, and I just don't see you being clever enough to pull off what you're seemingly attempting to. Talking about the headspace of different characters. That people who are good guys, well, they can be bad guys. And people who are bad guys can be good guys. Because for that to happen, you'd not only just have to be intelligent and talented, but you'd have to actually share the morality of the audience. You would have to know how far you can push it and in what specific circumstances somebody can get away with doing actions that would normally be considered wrong. Generally, because it would still serve justice. People would get what they deserved. It's not what Hollywood normally does. It's not just people being evil, but thinking they're good, or just being evil by the audience's definition, but sharing Hollywood's twisted morality. That's not what moral ambiguity means. And it definitely doesn't mean, oh, well, I of course believe that Jedi are benevolent and well-intentioned, but they're an institution and they've amassed power. Being an institution and amassing power doesn't make you evil. You can't be benevolent with power and somehow have that make you evil. That's not how that works. What this is a principle of Hollywood. That anyone with power must be evil. That anyone with an institution must be wrong. That we have to tear it down. It's the revolutionary principle. All revolutions aren't good things. A Sith revolution never could be. Because they're Sith. They are innately evil. But to hear them say it, no, the bad guys can be good guys. The Sith can look after puppies too. And you combine that with everything we already know. Oh, it's against the patriarchy and we've got these check boxes. And what you have stepping up to the plate is just every single red flag for a complete and utter disaster. I mean, we saw how Ahsoka turned out. We saw how Kenobi turned out. But I don't think anything is going to prepare us for The Acolyte. If The Acolyte is anything like Watchmen, I get the feeling they'll be the one in the streets, looking up, desperately screaming for help. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe. More videos like this in the future, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.